Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming and games through a feminist lens. Today, I'm your host, Alex, and I'm joined by my friends Jem and Matt. Before we get started, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gaming the system for some exclusive content. Or you can send us a one-off donation via PayPal to our email address, wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com. Hello and welcome to a series of episodes that we're going to be exploring the recent release from Haylight, a game developer, called Split Fiction. And as the name of the game implies, we're going to split our episodes in two and have our first episode today all about co-op and the game mechanics of co-op and co-op as a genre. And then in the following episode, part 2, we're going to look at the story of Split Fiction, and that part's going to be a little bit more spoilery. So if you want a spoiler-free episode, this one is your bag. And for the next one, you know that we're going to be covering some of the significant bits of the story and what it touches on and its general themes, etc., and things like that. So, I've recently played Split Fiction with my other half. We're a big fan of the Haylight Games in general. If you didn't know, they have produced games like A Way Out, which is where you played two people who are prison mates and they have to break out of prison essentially and do all sorts of things like that. And then you've got what was a really, I think probably the most successful series game within that series of games is probably It Takes Two, which became very popular. I can't remember exactly how many years ago it came out. But if you know those games, then you know this developer. And their most recent release is Split Fiction, which centres on two female protagonists who are attempting to get rich by writing stories, essentially. And they head up to this big, shiny publisher to attempt to publish their stories. So that's kind of the premise of the game. And it's kind of split, as the name implies, between sci-fi and fantasy worlds. So that's a little bit of context for the game in general. But I want to kick off with a first question for you both. You've obviously both played the game yourselves with various different people. And so we'll get on to who you played with and how much you enjoyed the game in a moment. But I just want to start off with a little bit of context covering what co-op is as a game genre. We do obviously cover a lot of different game genres when we talk on the pod. And co-op is perhaps one of the less commonly talked about game genres, but I think it is definitely a popular genre of gaming. And so I think this particular format of what they call mandatory co-op is a new and interesting genre to explore. So what does co-op actually mean to you as gamers? And have you played much of this particular genre in the past?
No, I haven't played much of this genre in the past. I played It Takes Two, and that's why I'm playing this. I have played some co-op, but it's been more things like Divinity, Original Sin, and more sort of you sit in separate rooms and you play your games on your PC, kind of more involved games, I think, in that they're more tactical than this. And I was thinking about the idea of co-op games, and I think sometimes people feel like co-op games are quite simple because I think they sometimes get lumped into the idea of sort of party games. Yes, and so there's lots of co-op games that are party games, super fun and well worth trying out. But co-op games are everything. I mean, originally I said no, and that's an absolute lie. But you see, I think that's exactly, I'm doing exactly what I think I was saying about that. In my head, I was thinking I played StarCraft was one of the ones that early days, and I used to play. I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, I played StarCraft, and we used to always play that as a co-op game. So either you'd be working together against a common computer-generated opponent, or you would play against each other, or you might play two people against two other people and things like that. So we used to play co-op in StarCraft back in sort of early 2000s. So yeah, I've been playing co-op games, I suppose, in that format for a long time.
You've been playing Baldur's Gate with Daniel, haven't you?
Yeah, played Baldur's Gate, played original Sin Divinity, as I said, and I think it's been really fun with my daughter because that's introduced the kind of console co-op games which I haven't done so much of, and I think that's really what I'm thinking about, because they feel like that's more couch co-op is the sort of sitting on the couch and playing a console game. So it's been that's been quite a newish thing for me. And we played Rayman, and we played all sorts of games like that, and and it's a really nice way to game with somebody who perhaps isn't as confident with gaming, or perhaps isn't as I don't know. It's a great way to get people involved when they haven't had a lot of gaming experience, because if things get too hard, you've usually got somebody else you can hand the controller to, or you can get somebody else to do the heavy lifting. For example, in Split Fiction, I've been definitely getting my daughter to do the heavy lifting because I am incapable of jumping or jumping and shooting, or basically, any of the skills that you need for the game. So
it is definitely a step up in difficulty for sure. We'll come on to that a little later on, but it's interesting you mentioned the term couch co-op. That's definitely what I tend to associate more with those types of party cooperative games, because they're a lot more sort of chilled out, and the clues in the name, you're on the couch, you're having a fun time. And it got me thinking this question. I don't know how you feel about it, Matt, but there's obviously, you can play games together and you can compete against each other. I don't know if I would describe that as co-op, because to me, obviously, co-op is short for cooperative. So that's about working together and working with somebody, not against somebody. So how do you feel? Where do you think Split Fiction sits? And would you describe a competitive game with two people as a co-op game, or would you call it something else?
I think it's good for us to expand and reflect and see what we think about what exactly a co-op game is, because when I think co-op game, I immediately think there's Split Fiction, there's A Way Out, there's It Takes Two, there's Brothers, Tale of Two Sons, there's Unraveled 2, and that's it. My first thing when I go, right, that's you have two people, they sit next to each other and they have a story that they can't complete without the other one. But what cooperative means is that you're more than one person working towards a shared goal. So, and how do we differentiate a co-op game from a multiplayer game? And I think as we expand what co-op means, my main experience of co-op gameplay was 15 years ago playing Call of Duty, playing the zombie mode especially, and also there was a Spec Ops mode where you'd have to go through a mission with two or more of you and just running around with your friends doing things on split screen. So split screen is I think it's a dying art in the age of the internet. You don't need to have a split screen, whereas with these Haylight games, they prove that you can tell a wonderful story and make a wonderful game with split screen. And it just harkens back to a better time in terms of cooperative stuff, because the couch co-op thing is such a warm place to be experiencing something. And yeah, whether I think when I think multiplayer, I think the scale, right? So if it's more than 4 people, then it's probably multiplayer. Whereas if it's, say, I remember we spent hours and hours one evening drinking vodka and doing, in Call of Duty, those like obstacle course things where you go, you shoot the target, run up the stairs, melee, throw a grenade. And we did that over and over and over again, competing against each other. And that thing where like you'll start off at 30 seconds, then you'll get down to 25, then 21, then 19, then 24, then 25, then 19, then 17, then 26 again, and just going round and round and round like that, and just passing the controller to each other. So yeah, I think co-op implies like a more intimate setting where it's about teamwork towards a common thing, or focusing on one particular activity that you're jarring against each other with. So yeah, the expansion of what it is basically just points out the variety of ways there are to play co-op games.
Indeed. When I thought about it a bit more, I reflected and thought, well, some of the best co-op games I've played are probably the Lego games. And I used to play those with my sister. There was like Lego Indiana Jones, Lego Star Wars. I think there was the Lego Lord of the Rings, but I don't know if they've made a remake for that. I don't think they have. But they were games that you could play on your own. So they weren't necessarily designed only for 2 people to play them. But you could play it with a friend and have the screen split and be able to get through as 2 people rather than 1 person. But it wasn't necessarily designed only for 2 people. What I think Haylight is kind of leading the way with this particular genre, where you cannot complete the game unless you have another person playing with you. So it's definitely an interesting way of looking at that.
What about board games? Board games seem far more like we could include those as well, because it's very rare to play a board game on your own.
That's very true. Yes.
I think board games have the same issue as we were talking about with video games, as to whether or not they're cooperative or competitive. But they're definitely cooperative board games. So I'm playing Pandemic Legacy. We're on season 2 now. I play that with my mum and Daniel, and that's, you're all working together to a common goal. And I think that would be for me a key thing, that it is about all working towards something together, cooperatively, as opposed to competing with one another. So, for example, I wouldn't put Mario Karts as a couch co-op, but it obviously would be a sort of group game. It's a game you play with friends. It's a game you need. Well, you don't need to play it with friends. Actually, you can just play it against the computer. And I think it's interesting what you were saying, Alex, about like, can you just play the game without anyone? Can you play it on your own? And obviously split fiction and It Takes Two, no, you can't. You do need someone to play. And I have played other games where you couldn't play them on your own. So for a recent holiday, we got Keep Talking and No One Explodes,
yes.
which requires at least 2 people to play. So one person has to describe what they're seeing and the other person has to tell you what to do with it. And then I also got another one called We Were Here, which is another cooperative game where, again, you don't play it on a split screen on the same screen. You play it on two separate computers, so you can play it remotely. So it wouldn't be couch co-op, but it would be co-op, because you have to work together to solve puzzles that one of you can see one set of things and the other one can see the other set of things. So yeah, I think there's quite a broad remit, but for me it does have to be about working towards a common goal for it to be the co-op.
I also love when you've got a single player game like Crash Bandicoot, which is what my mum and sister are playing a bit at the moment, where they'll play until they die and they lose all their lives and then hand the other one over. And I love that because it keeps everyone at sort of an even keel. And you go,
it avoids the risk of rage quitting as well. It's funny, you were talking there, Jim, about a co-op game where you have to play remotely. I've just remembered one. I think it came out pretty early on in the days of when the launch of the PS5 happened. It's called Operation Tango. Don't know if you've heard of that one. But I think it was released as part of PS Plus. And you had to play with someone else who wasn't in the same room as you, because one person was like a spy genre, and one of you was like infiltrating and the other one was like behind the cameras watching. So one person could see ahead of you and could kind of guide you, and then the other person would be the person in the building trying to get through and avoid all the traps and things. That's quite a good one as well, but that's different in that you have to be in two separate places to be able to play it together. So that was probably quite good timing with the pandemic and everything. So yeah, there's all sorts of different things that could fall under that definition of co-op. So yeah, really interesting to cover that as well. So when we talk about who we played with, I played with my partner, Tom. Who did you play with when you played Split Fiction?
Well, I've not played it. But I have watched my mum and sister play. I played a little bit with them, and they're just. I tell them that if they streamed for the global audience, they'd be massive megastars in no time, because they are unbelievably funny watching them play games. And I've been when they played. Well, basically, they've been streaming for over a year now, quite regularly. And for my sister's birthday at the start of the year, she asked me to make a compilation of some of the best clips of all their gaming stuff. And that was wonderful. And on the back of this episode, I started doing that for their Split Fiction playthrough. And there's 30 hours of footage to go through. So straight away, for I think it was a £40 game on release, and so you get a massive amount out of it, and then you could double that if you want to play it, swap players at the end. And I laugh. They make me laugh. It's quite rare that I properly laugh, and they make me laugh and chuckle constantly the entire way through. And I'll share with you some of the clips I've made. They're just it's fabulous watching them play games, because I play games differently to the way that they play. I'm more experienced, but they're doing this, and so they play the games differently to me, and just the uncertainty of whatever they're going to do at any given time, and the hilarious it's difficult. They're difficult games in general, like in terms of like the complexity of, especially I think the Split Fiction ramped it up a bit in the scale of what they do on screen and the variety of it. So they're basically playing dozens of different formats of game, and that's hard for anyone, no matter how experienced. And two people learning their way forwards through something is just very fun to watch, and they are a very funny duo. And Yeah, that was the way I experienced it.
That sounds
It's so much
can't
fun.
wait
I
to see the
think
clips.
so. I've been playing it with my daughter because we played It Takes Two together, and then we were going to get this when it came out, but we decided to save it for the summer holidays. So we've basically been playing it over the summer, and I think we're nearly finished. I think we're in like the sort of final scenes of it, and then she is playing it, but with the other way round. So she's playing the character that I'm playing with Daniel. So that, and they're a bit further behind. So she's basically flicking between the two, and you can do that. It's a little, it's a shame because it's a little bit technically complicated, and it's a bit of you have to do a bit of a fudge with it to get it to work without losing your saves and losing your place. And I think they missed a trick in doing that, not having multiple.
I was going to ask if you'd stayed as the same character all the way through, because we just decided that we were going to, so I don't think we'd even tried switching.
Well,
I didn't realise it wouldn't let you.
I think you can switch at any time, but if you want to play the game again, you effectively go through the chapters as they are in the game, and which is fine. But if you haven't reached the end of a chapter, if you don't stop with the other one when you're at the end of a chapter, and you start on the next one, you go back to the most recent beginning. So you end up having to redo a chapter if you're not careful. If you start with another one. And it would have been nice to have been able to have two games running concurrently, especially as I'm sure we're not the only people who've wanted to have multiple people playing it or playing different characters.
I'm sure.
So, but it's been quite interesting for her particularly to play the two different characters and to remember the scenes and be like, oh yeah, I know what I have to do here, but to see it from a completely different perspective because she's playing it as a different character.
And to actually be the one doing it. And to actually
going,
be the one doing it.
Slow.
Rather than just going, come on, you're being really slow.
There have been some bits where she's like, oh yeah, this is actually really difficult, isn't it? And I think that's been really fun. But there's also, I mean, we'll get into the game specifics later. But so it's been interesting because I've been playing it and then I've also been watching them play. So I've sort of had two different versions of the game, really, and that's been quite fun to see and quite fun to watch. And it's a fun game to watch.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Are you all enjoying it generally though? Are you all having a good time with it, like individually? How is it together? Have there been any testing moments in terms
there
of
are always testing moments
gameplay?
with me and my daughter when we're playing together because I'm so rubbish apparently. So yeah, I mean it's frustrating when you hit a place where you can't, where you're struggling and you're constantly dying.
Yes. That comes up occasionally where you both have to be able to do something for it to progress. Is that? Yeah, I found those bits quite tricky, especially with some of the platforming or in some of the boss fights and things as well. I was definitely the player that needed a little bit of help every now and then. We did occasionally swap because I found my character's action to be too difficult. And then we coped fine with it. But yeah, I definitely would say it's a step up in difficulty compared to It Takes Two. So I'm not sure how, as you say, less experienced gamers would have a time, like whether they would enjoy it as much, because it is quite a spike in difficulty.
And it draws on so many different genres and styles of gaming that there's bound to be something that is difficult for almost everyone. But maybe that's okay. Maybe that's a lesson that we can learn in life. You know, things that aren't always easy. But
no. I'll come back to that particular point in a moment, Jem, because I really want to discuss all the different influences on the game. But one thing I want to touch on before we get to that is the fact that obviously you can't play it without two people. But once again, this game is being offered with what they call a friend pass. And that's where only one person needs to actually have bought a copy of the game for two people to be able to play it. They can send an invite out to their friend and then they can join their game without having to pay for it, which I think is a really great way of, one, making the game popular, and two, being able to play with people without worrying about asking them to stump up however much the game costs. I think it's about £40 to play with you. You know, I just think it's a really good way of looking at it. And they did that with It Takes Two, and I think A Way Out as well. But yeah, it's definitely something that I think more co-op games should be doing. I don't know how you both feel about it.
The Dark Pictures used to do it, but then when I was looking for the friend pass version of one of the recent ones, they said, "Oh yeah, we've unlisted those ones now because we want all the money that we can milk out of it rather than focusing on players." I'm not sure what the sales have been on Split Fiction, but it's...
Do you know, I'd completely forgotten about the pictures, of course. Those are couch co-op games as well.
It sold 2 million units in its first week. So 40 times 2, that's £80 million in 1 week. That's enough.
Yeah.
That's plenty. Whereas if they were, I don't know if they're published by EA, which isn't a very good thing, but clearly and EA are a bastard monster corporation that would throw a child against the wall to steal their pocket money. That's the kind of people that they are. But Split Fiction, their developers have clearly gone, well, we're going to make tens of millions. They're probably a very small team. I can't imagine them being a massive team. So if you go, right, we'll make a really good profit and allow our games to be more playable, that's what they should all be doing. And just it's a nice to see that insane greed hasn't overcome them.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think, wouldn't you, that if you were making a co-op game, that would just be something you'd factor into the cost of making the game, that any co-op game would give at least one friends pass out to play, and maybe you could only use it at any one time, or you could only use it once or whatever. But if you're making a co-op game that requires another player, then it's only sensible to offer that, because that is going to make the game unplayable if you do not give that. And I agree, it should just be something that's factored into the cost of the game, just like any other business cost. And if that means that you have to pay an extra £5 a game, then fine. That would more than cover that cost really overall. And so I'm pleased they did that, and I think that is a really good thing that they've done.
Definitely, yeah, I would agree. So it's about £40. Does it contain 40 games in one? That brings us nicely to a question I wanted to discuss with you about how much Split Fiction borrows from other types of games and different gaming genres within its sort of gameplay loop. Essentially, the core gameplay of Split Fiction is that you're switching between sci-fi and fantasy. So you've got these different themes and different vibes which lend themselves to different types of games. And so each new story you get, you're going to get a different type of gameplay and a way of navigating the world. It's probably quite too many to count. I wasn't keeping count, unfortunately. There's probably some stats out there somewhere about the different sort of gameplay leaps that you go through for each story. But I want to know which were your favourites to play, and how do you feel about the types of games that maybe influenced split fiction, where you see the inspirations coming from for those sci-fi environments, for those fantasy environments. They're both very popular genres generally for all types of media. And so I think there was a lot of inspiration going on there. But in terms of the types of game play that I picked up on, you had things like arcade side-scroller, you even had not quite bullet hell, but you had, like, it was sort of a 2D where you had to escape things flying at you from like this direction. You've had a lot of platforming, a lot of top-down gameplay, as opposed to like 3D behind the shoulder. You had some first-person, you had a lot of puzzles, a lot of boss fights as well, and some set-piece gameplay as well. So there's probably more. But yeah, what sorts of things were most memorable for you, and where do you think they were dragging their influences from, perhaps?
Well, first off, the melding half sci-fi and half fantasy is the best creative idea ever. It's absolute genius and so obvious. You think, why hasn't anyone done this before? And it's basically like you marrying Mass Effect and Dragon Age. They're basically the same thing. They're just in different settings.
I mean, they're always together in bookshops as well, which is, I hadn't thought about it until just now. But yeah, sci-fi and fantasy are always
next to each other. They're two sides of the same coin.
So, yeah.
And Jem saying a moment ago about, well, we were talking about how there are difficulty spikes, and it's for less experienced gamers, it can be a bit more daunting and a bit, because you're jumping around between so many things. But what it does really well is has a consistent gaming language throughout. So what it feels like when you don't know how games work is you go, I don't know where I am, I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know what I need to do, and I don't know how to do it. Whereas with this, you go, okay, we're here. That shiny thing over there is pink or green. That means we probably have to go over there. And it's designed enough. The actual design. If you, this is the incredible thing about game design is, if you take away all of the art and turn it into little grey cubes, then that's the way that they design and engineer it to make it playable and manageable to move through. Is you go, right, when there's no art to hide behind, because that's what a lot of games do, they go, oh, look at the fantastic visuals, when the gameplay is dreadful. And with this, there's always a point in the environment where you go, okay, that bit. Or there's a massive thing in the distance, you go, well, we probably have to go that way. And it's really, really good as a case study for gamers, actually, to go through and experience a ton of different kinds of games, because you'll come across a million different types that you might go, I've never played a game like that, and you might be interested in playing another one. Probably my favorite level was the birthday cake side quest, partially because I was playing that. I played that with Megan, and she was really bad at it.
So good. Really it's so funny.
And it was just very fun. And she says she gets intimidated playing with me because I'm more experienced. And I go,
I also had a lot of problems with that level.
But yeah, that was really good.
Got very shouted at.
Yeah, that was a really tough platform. Yeah, that's a hard one. I actually played that one as well as with Tom. I played it with my sister when she came and visited, and we were in the middle of split fiction at the time, and I said, oh, do you want to play one of the little side levels with me? Because we always enjoy playing co-op together growing up. And I picked birthday cake because I knew it was fun and whimsical, and like it was nice and quite a quick level. And Ellie really struggled with a lot of the jumping as well, but she absolutely cackled her way through it. She was fully like crying tears of laughter. She was having so much fun, even though she wasn't progressing her little tooth character through the level. She was just laughing so much, and I think that's what's part of the fun of it.
There's
personally.
something wonderful about someone trying. There's something wonderful about someone trying really hard and getting absolutely nowhere and getting worse.
More and more stress, more and more pressure. Yeah, I really like all the different genres and how cleverly they've integrated them into the game. I think you made a really good point there, Matt, that there is always there's a consistency of the gameplay throughout. So you usually get, and the same was true in It Takes Two, because that you usually get, each of you gets a skill that you then use collaboratively to work your way through. In Split Fiction, they've made heavy use of the sort of characters' colours. So as you said, you have a pink area and a green area, and you each know which is your sort of place that you should be heading towards. So there's been lots of times where it's like, I don't know what to do. Well, there's a sort of pink bit up there, so I think we should be going towards that. There were a couple of bits where we had no idea what we were doing. We spent a lot of time, generally we were just trying to make it more complicated than it actually was.
One extremely funny thing that both Megan and Mum they've with a little bit of help, they've training their way out of it, is when they're driving or riding a horse or any kind of vehicle, you have to be you can afford to be very subtle with the way that you're turning. But they would end up turning right. I turned left a bit. Oh no, I've turned too far. Then I need to turn back and overcorrect all the way right and all the way to left and no way. So swinging back, and they still say to each other, right, you're overcorrecting, and they talk themselves back down to the middle. And it's empowering and also humbling, which I think humbling is an important thing when gaming with someone else, because there are so many points when Megan's much more experienced than Mum is, but there are plenty of points where Megan just completely falls apart.
I think that's the point I was making earlier about how because you've got all these different genres of games, there's going to be something in there that is really challenging even to the most experienced gamer, and that might just be because quick reflexes isn't your thing, or coordination or whatever. And I like the homage to gaming history that you experience when you're playing through, and they did do the same in Take Two, but not to such a degree. And I think what I really liked about Take Two was that there was a really good balance between the characters, how influential they were. If one character had a skill that was used slightly more in one area, then the other one would have one that was used slightly more in another area. So you never feel that your character is useless, or that you haven't got anything to do, or that you're not bringing anything to the gameplay overall. And it very rarely feels sort of shoehorned in. It all seems to flow really well. And I think it's, the way that you'll be running along going forward, and suddenly the screen changes and it's a platformer, and you're having to kind of like jump and move stuff around, or you have to rely on the other person moving at the same rate as you, requiring that level of coordination, and the communication between you and the other person is really key. I think it really is cooperative right, as far as I'm concerned, and I know it's got amazing reviews, and it really, really deserves them, because it's just, they've thought about so many different things, and it's just so much fun. There's, like you say, there's just bits of it that just have you laughing hysterically. There are bits that are infuriating, there are bits that are just bonkers, and then there's bits, I mean, my daughter and I have been crying our eyes out at various points in the story. And we had the same thing, and we've still not gotten over the elephant scene in Takes Two. So
no, oh my god, no way. The elephant has an enduring trauma, I think, attached to it. Every time I talk about it with friends, they're like, "Oh my god, the elephant." That's all we need to say, and we know, we know what we mean. Oh yeah. No, what I like about those style of games, in particular this developer, is I think I wasn't sure how much it was going to surprise me, because it takes two really surprise me. The game would take turns in directions I wasn't expecting, and I think because I knew there was going to be sci-fi and then there was going to be fantasy and then the sci-fi and then fantasy, I was like, how much can it surprise me this time? And it did. It definitely did. And I think it did it in perhaps different ways to It Takes Two, but whether that's the particular boss that you're fighting or the way that the story unravels. But yeah, it definitely takes you to some places which you're not expecting, which is, again, one of the things I really love about these games. I'm going to play devil's advocate and just ask you, obviously it's using a lot of gameplay genres and gaming styles and taking a lot of inspiration from games. Playing devil's advocate, you could say that's a bit lazy and just being, like, oh, we're not going to think of anything original. We're just going to take all of the best bits from these games and use them, and that's our game done. Or is it more a celebration of those games and saying, look at all these great things from these games. Let's put them all together and make an even better, bigger game out of it. Could you argue for one over the other? Or do you think there's a view that I haven't yet covered? Asking that question.
It's just the ultimate showcase for the history of gaming. So it's reaching back to the earliest days of gaming and then going, yeah, this stuff is still awesome, isn't it? These 2D side scrollers from 30 plus years ago, it's still fun. It's not just Fortnite and Call of Duty. There's all this massive variety of different kinds you can play, and shows that these things are the best parts of gaming, and we've stitched them together in a creative way and applied them creatively. Probably two of the coolest levels that were really I'll just tell you them first and explain why they're cool. One, when you turn into a pinball and is fleeing from a boss through this pinball machine, that was genius and comes out of nowhere. Yeah. And a side quest called Collapsing Star, where it's the star sending out a pulse and just going pulse, pulse, and that the awesome. You
have to get behind the cover.
The tempo of that was awesome, and another very fun source of comedy is those transition points between gameplay types, because you can go from going down a tunnel to one of you's riding a car and the other one's shooting it, and then you crash into a train tunnel and you have to grapple past the train, and then all of a sudden a robot appears and you're in a 2D side scroller, got to jump up things and then turn on switches, and then you're a pig, you're a pair of magic pigs, and you're trying to find apples. And those points of when it suddenly ramps up in intensity and switches to a new thing, that panic, I think it is a wonderful celebration of all these different types and respecting those types, and then just making them good and unique in the moment as well.
I think it's a celebration and not lazy. I think that they've recognized that a lot of these styles of games are still around, especially in the indie market. Side scrollers and things are still very popular, but not necessarily with the same sorts of people that might pick up and play split fiction. So I think it's a really good opportunity to kind of introduce people to different genres of gameplay that they might not have experienced before, which is obviously the whole underlying story really between Zoe and Mio, sort of learning to appreciate each other's interests and each other's forms. And so it is all about recognizing that it doesn't, and I think, you know, they gave an opportunity to not, it doesn't have to be original, it just has to be brilliant. And I think it is actually original, brilliant. And that, I mean, they've definitely drawn on lots of things, but they've put their own unique slant on it, and they've properly embedded it in the story. So I think it's to be commended.
Fantastic. I would agree with you both, definitely. I think, unless anyone has anything else they want to add, I'm going to wrap up this episode. For those of you wondering, why haven't they talked about the story yet? That's like the whole deal. That's going to be in the next episode, and that will contain story spoilers, so you have been warned. So do tune in if you'd like to hear more from us and our deep dive into split fiction. But we hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you again at this time next week. Thank you for listening and watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Gaming the System. If you want to support us, you can donate to us through our PayPal by sending it to wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com if you want to send us a one-off donation. If you want to donate to us monthly, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem. Until next time, bye-bye.